Welcome to Tashkent 2014, one of the preliminary tournaments leading up to the candidates final for the World Championship Challenger. It's in a series of FIDE Grand Prix series. A lot of great players in here, but especially for me is my buddy Prix Nakamura is in it, and I hope Carl does well. Anyway, folks, FIDE Grand Prix Series, Tashkent 2014. Games coming up. Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Round 1 of FIDE Grand Prix from Tashkent 2014. This is another leg of the Grand Prix Series to determine the final candidates, and the winner of that tournament will play for the World Championship. And this is going to be a wild game. You got two wild players. My buddy Prix Nakamura is white from the United States, and Jobava-Rd from Georgia. He's also a wild player too. I mean, these guys very rarely have boring games, and this is no exception. Nakamura is white, Jobava is black. It's going to be a pogo Indian. Let's go through the opening a little bit. Pretty much all standard stuff. Castles. Carl goes e4. That's a big center there for white. I mean, look at all the squares his pawns control right there. d6, trying to get some hold on e5 for black. Bishop d3, e5, there he goes. A lot of pawn moves, but I think they're necessary. Carl decides to castle. E takes d4, knight takes, knight c6. Now I've got my Fritz 13 computer on off screen. A little less than half pawn advantage for white. Knight takes, pawn takes. Now, granted, his pawns are doubled here, but they're center pawns, and I'll tell you, he can go after white's center here pretty soon if white is not careful. Knight to b3 by Carl, rook d8 by Jobava. Knight a5. Interesting, to say the least. What he is threatening, besides pawn takes, is just to put the knight there if the pawn moves, hitting the queen and the bishop. Bishop d7 to protect the pawn. Bishop f4. Now, computer has suggested maybe b4 instead, and the sequence of the computer likes is knight takes, bishop f7, knight takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and all that nonsense. The position is dead even in material. Yeah, like they would have went for that line, right? Bishop f8, just to keep an eyeball on the pawn here from the rook. This was an old expression: if you have a bishop on f8, you cannot mate. Rook e1, h6. Like the g4, I think, was worth looking at. And then queen to d2. After h6, h3. I think he's trying to stop, of course, bishop here. Black's a little crap right now. Now he goes for this knight maneuver, and we're going to see knight to h7. Now, that's a second choice on the computer, but it's a close second. Now it's third, but it's a close second. What he's trying to do is reroute the knight to go to here and then back to e6. That's, I think, is his plan. And Carl goes right for the juggler right away, e5. Now, looking at the computer off screen, bishop c2 and bishop g3 are suggested by the computer, e5 being the last choice, but I like e5 better. It opens things up. Knight to g5. Now Carl goes b4. And I think he's slowly tightening the vice on black here. D takes. Bishop takes. Now here's where it's going to start getting a little crazy. Coming up here. c5. h4. Now, what do you do? What do you do? Now, right now, it's almost a point advantage, a pawn advantage for white. Material is dead even. What do you do here? Now, oddly enough, the move that he made is the best move. C takes B. Pawn takes, queen takes, bishop b4. Now white's got a knight for 2 pawns. That's what Jobava has sacrificed, a piece for 2 pawns. Let's just see how he does here. Now the computer only shows less than a pawn advantage for white. White has to be very careful and very precise in the next few moves in order to make that sacrifice foolish. Rook takes c5 for black, or bishop g4, the 2 suggested moves. Jobava decides to go bishop g4, hitting the queen. Queen to b1. Excellent. Excellent move. Now it gets a little crazy. What would you do here as black? What would you do here as white? First, take the piece back. Okay. Now what? Do you take the rook now? Knight c6. You take the rook. Now comes the tough part. You play rook takes rook check. Rook takes a5, taking the knight for free. Or do you play pawn takes, b takes a? What do you do? What do you do? Now the best move on the computer is rook takes the knight. He takes, of the 3 choices, black takes the worst choice. If he had taken queen takes the knight. Now black's got a bishop and 2 pawns for a rook. A takes, queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes, bishop to d6. Now, it's a bishop and a pawn for a rook. I don't know how this one would go. Computer has it. Of course, computers can defend perfectly, but humans can't. What would you rather have at this point? White's position or black's position? That was the choice if he had played rook takes e1. But he played b takes a3, which is a mistake. This puts white way ahead. Knight to b, excuse me, rook takes, queen takes, knight to b3. 3 pawns for a rook and score. And white's only ahead a half a pawn. Have to be careful here. Bishop hits the queen. Okay? Makes sense. Queen moves. Now this is where I think he screws up, but the computer agrees with him. I don't think he should have traded queens. Knight to d2. See, Carl didn't want to trade queens. He played queen takes. Eventually this pawn is going to get down here and help out his buddy. This bishop and this bishop are going to help out in that regard. So there's no way a Carl can take that. So he just moves the knight. G6 or G5 is the computer's choice. Probably just gives some loot for his king. He plays bishop b4. Maybe not so precise. A Carl goes knight to e4. Now everyone thinks, well, we'll just take off the knight, right? Well, people forgot this bishop's all the way down here. Protect the knight. And nothing's going after the bishop, so he's fine right there. And this is where I think black miscues. He trades queens. Queen to d4 I think might have been better. And after queen to d1, queen to e5. But once he trades queens, he's doomed. a5. Now that's a very human move. Very human move. Later maybe even go here. And you've got all of these pieces protecting each other. Power of a bishop. King f1. Carl decides to bring the king over. He's going to need him. Which makes perfect sense, especially in an endgame. Bishop d7. Moves the king again. Black thinks the 2 bishops are going to chase off the rook, but he moves the king up again. Bishop b3. Knight c3. And now it's out of reach for black. A2. Rook A1. And this is where black, Bahadur Jobava from Georgia, resigns. I got to give it to Akaro. It was black that made the sacrifice, but Akaro put him in that position, number one. And number two is Akaro had to play very precisely in order for that sacrifice not to really mean anything. So hats off to Akaro. He won in the first round. I'm hoping he's going to get in the candidates final. That's my hope for Akaro. I think this might be his last chance for a long time to get in the championship cycle in the finals. I hope he makes it to the candidates final. That's my wish for him. And then he's going to have to turn it on. He's going to have to play very creatively and get a little lucky at the same time, but mostly play creatively. Go back to a little bit like the old days. Not the I don't care, I'm just going to play how I want to Akaro, but the Akaro is now the mature, level-headed, under control of his emotions, but mix up a little bit of that dangerousness when he was younger. Just a little. And if you mix it with what Akaro has now, I think he has a good chance. Of course, I'm a little biased. One, I'm a Akaro fan, and two, as I'm an American, but even still, those facts are still nonetheless true. Anyway, folks, that's one of the rounds from Game 1. I hope you enjoyed it. And I want to thank all my new subscribers. Yesterday, I got to 200 subscribers. That's a big deal for a little guy like me. There's a small channel that there's a million guys doing chess videos, and I think to get 200 subscribers is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about that, and thank you all to all my subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And as I always say, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.